Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're at in the world. For me, it is definitely morning, and quite a morning at that. I apologize for the slightly late start this morning. I'm Amanda Pedersen, and this is Medtech Unfiltered. I don't know about you, but my smoke detector in my house prefers to let us know at 2 a.m. that the batteries need changed. So there was some sleep disruption in my house as my husband and I were woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of our smoke detector beeping, and of course we have multiple smoke detectors in our house, so we're half asleep and wandering around the house trying to figure out which one is beeping. And so anyway, but enough about that. Today we're talking about medtech CEOs who have landed in hot water with the government. In recent years, there's been a number of them. The industry is certainly no stranger to scandals. Over the years, we've seen cases of sexual harassment, fraud in a number of different ways, kickback schemes, that sort of thing. So medtech is certainly not immune from having leadership kind of go quote Breaking Bad, as they say, or take a wrong turn or a pretty big misstep, but none of these cases or stories have been quite as bizarre as that of Elizabeth Holmes. She's the founder of the now-defunct Theranos. I think that most of our core audience, most of you are familiar with this story. Theranos is a story that MD+DI has been covering for years, ever since their glory days. To when it all fell apart. And but just real quick, just for those of you who may not be familiar with the story, suffices to say, Theranos is a company that was founded by Elizabeth Holmes, and she the idea was an amazing, fantastic idea. Basically, it was they claimed that they were developing a blood test that would enable you to simply go to Walgreens and get your finger pricked, and just with a simple finger prick at Walgreens, they could test you for all sorts of different things, basically anything that they can test for at a central lab would be able to be done through this test with a simple drop of blood. And patients would get the results in 4 hours. Now, at the time, this was amazing at the time, and it sounded like the technology had no limits. It sounded like it was the kind of thing that would put companies like Quest Diagnostics, for example, out of work, because you wouldn't have a need for central lab testing if you had something like this. And in the age of COVID, I think that we have a whole new appreciation, really, for just how incredible a test like that would be when we have patients all across America who are waiting several days, even a week or longer, to find out whether or not they have COVID, which is a big problem, obviously, because nobody wants to be the person that accidentally spreads COVID in their community. So if you're suspected of having COVID, the responsible thing, of course, is to stay home and stay quarantined, and even stay away from your family as much as possible for 14 days or until you have a negative result confirmed, which again can take days. So given that perspective, it really, what Theranos was trying to do really was nothing short of amazing. And perhaps someday we will have a technology capable of doing those things. perhaps not in the same package. Might look differently. It might work differently, or be used in a different setting. But I do think that someday, at some point in the future, I would like to believe that we will have a test like that. Now, the reason that we're bringing this up is Holmes is back in the spotlight after her lawyers revealed last week that they might be building her defense around a possible mental issue. And of course, this part of the judge's order was redacted, so nobody is really sure, other than the prosecutors and the defense attorneys and the judge in the case. No one's really sure the specifics of what her defense is trying to claim. And let me just be uber clear here. Mental health and domestic violence are issues that I take very seriously. So I just want to make it super clear that if Elizabeth Holmes does in fact have some sort of mental issue, and really, who of us doesn't have some sort of mental issue these days? I mean, anxiety, depression, it's just, it's that the kind of time that I think we're beginning to understand that mental health affects a lot of people, and it is very serious. So I don't ever want to be perceived as downplaying that or not taking it seriously. However, it does seem like a typical defense strategy in a case like this. And the strategy brings up a good question. Who is Elizabeth Holmes? Does anybody really know Elizabeth Holmes? Does anyone really know who she is? Does she even know? I'm not sure. And I listened to an interesting podcast recently in which Theranos whistleblower Tyler Schultz addressed that very question. Schultz not only worked for Theranos, but his grandfather was one of Theranos's and Elizabeth's in particular biggest fans. He was a huge cheerleader for the company, and he was one of the many supporters of the company. The company was at one time valued at $9 billion. They grew very, very, very quickly. Too quickly, some might say, and perhaps had they taken a different approach and kind of maybe grown through acquisition, or started smaller, started with maybe just one test and perfecting that, and then expanding, who knows what would have happened? Who knows if we would be talking about the situation today or not? But Tyler Schultz, the whistleblower in the case, he asked the same very question that I just posed to you. Who is Elizabeth Holmes? And when Tyler first met Elizabeth, she was notorious for wearing black turtlenecks every single day, kind of inspired. She sort of had a Steve Jobs-esque image in the public eye. She was on a very strict diet that she maintained. She supposedly she slept 4 hours a night, and she basically just lived at Theranos, and was a real go-getter, very extremely driven businesswoman. And she had a lot of admirers for that reason. And now she's, when you see videos of her in the media, or images of her in the media, it's clear that she's really trying to portray a softer side of herself. She's no longer wearing her hair pulled up and back in a kind of a severe, no fuss, no muss hairstyle. She's tends to wear her hair down now. It's much longer. She's really trying to portray almost a girl next door image. She's married to a relatively young and very wealthy man. They are known for doing things like they've been seen going to Burning Man together. They throw very lavish parties in San Francisco. I mean, she's really, at least to see her public image these days, she seems to really be living her best life, which, good for her. But meanwhile, there's a lot of very angry people who supported the company and was misled by Elizabeth Holmes and her chief operating officer at the time, known as Sunny Baldwini, I think. I probably butchered that. I apologize, but suffices to say, there's allegations of misleading a lot of people, a lot of investors, even patients, and I think that's what hurts the most is, it seems like the company kind of, rather than fess up and admit that their technology didn't quite do what they had hoped it would and what they had claimed it did, they could have taken the high road. They could have settled their dispute with Walgreens and any other legal disputes. They could have settled with the SEC, which they eventually did, but they could have done that much earlier on, and they just could have pivoted. They could have been more forthcoming about the limitations of the technology. They could have acquired a smaller company and another technology and pursued that. There's lots of different things that they could have done, but hindsight is 2020. So suffices to say, the reason I bring all of this up is just because I think that Tyler really hit the nail on the head there when he asked, who is Elizabeth Holmes? And maybe we really don't know. And maybe the case will reveal more of her true self. I don't know. Honestly, when I first heard the news last week, I was just like, ugh, I don't even want to know. I'm just so over it. It's just kind of like, with everything else that we're faced with here in 2020, between social issues and COVID and political issues. I mean, it's just when I heard that Elizabeth Holmes, that there was a new development in the case, I honestly just wanted to be like, I don't even care. I'm done. I'm over it. I just want to, let's all just move on and just leave her to face her whatever fallout may come from her upcoming trial. But hearing Tyler talk, it really kind of confirms something that a lot of people have kind of poked fun at and pointed out, and we've certainly noticed as well, as just how different she looks now, and how different her lifestyle appears to be, at least in the public eye. But I do think that Tyler missed one very big point when he was talking about just how different she is, and how she's just a completely different person from the woman that he knew when he worked at Theranos. And that is that not only is she has ditched the Stephen Jobs-esque turtlenecks, but she's no longer talking in a faux baritone voice like this. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the case. Thank you for joining us for this MedTech Unfiltered, and we will see you next week.